The courtroom was ice cold despite the summer heat outside. Rows of reporters sat motionless, pens paused mid-sentence, eyes fixed on the woman standing behind the defendant's table. Detective Sarah Connors, minus 15 years on the force, 5 medals of valor, and a reputation for doing things by the book, stood silently as the judge read the verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Sentencing. Death. Gasps filled the room. Even the bailiff flinched. Sarah didn't speak, didn't flinch. Her posture remained stiff, her jaw clenched. But her dark brown eyes flickered with disbelief. As the judge finalized the sentencing, she turned slightly to the gallery. Dozens of eyes watched her, some filled with pity, others disgust, some just hungry for headlines. Her gaze locked onto a familiar face in the crowd. Officer Luis Morales, her former partner. He looked like someone had punched him in the gut, but Sarah didn't speak to him. Instead, she said just 6 words, low, calm, and chilling. Max knows the truth. Ask him. The room stirred with murmurs. A few people chuckled under their breath. Max was her retired K-9 unit partner, a German shepherd she'd raised since he was a pup. To suggest a dog could clear her name seemed absurd. The prosecutor smirked. The judge ignored it. Reporters scribbled it down for flair. As Sarah was escorted out in chains, Morales stood frozen. He knew Sarah better than anyone. He also knew Max, and something about her words clung to him like smoke, irrational, impossible, but refusing to be dismissed. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy exploded. Headlines blared. Killer COP sen TNCED to D8. Tiers, Lies, and Loal Tui. The Sarah Connors trial Indies in Shaychogsiki. Ask the dog. She says, insane or innocent. Inside a quiet kennel across town, Max sat alone, ears perked, waiting for a door that would not open. He didn't understand courtrooms or trials or how humans could abandon one another so easily. But when Sarah was taken, he knew something was wrong. He began to pace, and somewhere in his instincts, older than law, deeper than evidence, he knew his partner was in danger. And it wasn't over. Max had never liked cages. Even as a pup, he hated anything that felt like a trap. So when Officer Luis Morales brought him home after Sarah's sentencing, the German shepherd refused to go inside the kennel. He stood at the door of Sarah's old apartment instead, tail stiff, ears forward, as if waiting for her to come back through it. She never did. But every night, without fail, Max sat by that door and stared. For hours. Some nights he barked into the hallway, low and sharp. Other nights, he pawed at the wooden door so forcefully that Louis feared he'd tear through it. Max wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was searching. Louis tried everything. New toys, new food, walks at all his favorite parks. But Max only responded to one thing: Sarah's scent. He sniffed her old uniforms, her empty shoes, the leather holster she used to wear on patrol. Every time, he'd whine softly, nudge the items toward the door, then lie beside them with his head down. Then came the most disturbing thing. One afternoon, while Louis was cleaning out Sarah's old patrol car, Max began to growl. His nose locked onto something wedged under the passenger seat, a torn piece of a police vest. Not Sarah's. Louis knew her gear like the back of his hand. This was someone else's. Max wouldn't let it go. He clamped his jaws around it and refused to drop it, his eyes dark and locked on Louis. "What is it, boy?" Louis asked, his voice uneasy. Max just growled deeper. Louis took the fragment inside and searched the database for matching gear IDs. The serial number had been scratched off, but the style matched a standard-issue vest from their precinct, one used by several officers, including Sergeant Blake, the same Blake who had testified against Sarah. That night, Max did something he'd never done before. He howled, long, broken, and mournful. Not out of confusion. It sounded like grief, like rage, Louis recorded the moment on his phone, goosebumps crawling up his arms. Something about it felt wrong. Or maybe too right. Later, when he watched it back, a thought struck him. A dangerous one. What if Sarah wasn't wrong? What if the dog really did know the truth? Louis didn't plan on uploading the video. He just wanted to show someone, anyone, what Max was doing. The howling, the vest, the strange way Max reacted whenever he saw a photo of Sergeant Blake. But the moment he posted the 43-second clip on a crime discussion forum with the caption, "My partner's K9 knows something's wrong," it took on a life of its own. Within 12 hours, the video was on Twitter. By 24, it had been picked up by a major true crime TikTok page. Max's haunting howl, silhouetted against the glow of Sarah's empty apartment, struck a nerve with viewers. The internet exploded. This dog knows something. That's not a normal howl. That's grief. Why is he reacting to another cop's vest? Somebody reinvestigate this case now. People were captivated, not just by Max, but by the idea that a dog might be fighting to prove a human's innocence. The public had been torn on Sarah Connors. Some called her a disgrace. Others thought the evidence had been too convenient. But Max, he became the one thing everyone could believe in. Louis, overwhelmed by the attention, nearly pulled the video down. But just as he hovered over the delete button, he got a message. "I served in Afghanistan with a K9 unit. That dog isn't confused. He's tracking someone. He's identifying a suspect. Call me." Reed Lawson, former military K9 handler, now an independent dog behavior expert. The two met the next morning. Max greeted Reed with alert ears and cautious eyes. The retired handler spent 2 hours observing Max's behavior, how he sniffed Sarah's uniform, how he growled at the vest fragment, how he refused to enter Sarah's patrol car. At one point, Reed played the court footage on a laptop. Max lunged and barked when Blake appeared on screen. Reed sat back, stunned. "This isn't random," he said. "He's making connections. He remembers, and he's warning you." Louis's voice trembled. "You think he knows who really shot that suspect?" Reed didn't blink. "I think he never forgot it." By the next day, the hashtag MaxNows was trending worldwide. True crime podcasts began investigating the trial. Reddit lit up with theories. People weren't laughing anymore. The question echoing across the internet was now deadly serious. Could a dog bring down a murder conviction? The clip of Max barking at Sergeant Blake's image reached more than just the curious and the outrage. It landed on the desk of Noah Keene, a retired forensic audio analyst with a knack for catching what others missed. Noah had testified in over 30 federal trials, and though retired, he still monitored criminal justice headlines. He watched the video once, then again. Then he requested the original court-submitted bodycam footage. The case had always bothered him. A 5-second audio dropout just before the shooting, dismissed as a technical glitch. But Sarah's dog reacting violently to the soundless clip. That wasn't a glitch. That was a signal. Noah dusted off his old workstation and ran the file through specialized Spectrum software. His eyes narrowed as interference patterns appeared in the missing segment. Too structured, too uniform. "This wasn't a malfunction," he muttered. "This was edited." Deep in the corrupted layer, Noah found what he'd hoped for: residual audio fragments, digital ghosts left behind. He enhanced the waveform, isolating frequencies and clearing out noise. Then it came through, muffled but chilling. "Blake, don't." Then a gunshot. Then silence. Noah froze, staring at the screen. Sarah hadn't fired. She had warned someone. Seconds before the fatal shot. His heart pounded. He hadn't just found a flaw in the prosecution's case. He'd uncovered a cover-up. He contacted Louis immediately. That night, Louis played the recovered audio for Max. The dog's reaction was immediate and violent. He barked so aggressively at the speaker, Louis had to calm him down. Max wasn't just reacting to the sound. He was remembering it. Louis stared at the screen, jaw tight. Sarah tried to stop him, he said quietly. The next morning, Noah submitted his findings to the Innocence Alliance, a nonprofit known for reopening questionable convictions. Within hours, the case was flagged for emergency review. And across the internet, the mood shifted. Max was no longer just a loyal dog. He was now evidence. The idea that the original footage had been tampered with ignited a firestorm. Journalists reopened old interviews. Civil rights groups demanded answers. And somewhere in a quiet prison cell, Sarah Connors waited, unaware that her partner's bark had just reopened the fight for her life. Louis didn't sleep the night after hearing that audio. The voice in the clip had haunted him. Sarah, desperate, shouting, "Blake, don't." Right before the gunshot. It wasn't just evidence. It was the beginning of a new story. One that Max had been trying to tell all along. Louis returned to the precinct that morning under the pretense of gathering paperwork. He wasn't supposed to have access to the old crime scene, but Sarah's badge still had pulled in some circles, and not everyone believed she was guilty. He brought Max with him. As soon as they arrived at the condemned warehouse where the raid had gone down, Max's demeanor changed. His ears perked. His body stiffened. Then, without warning, he took off. "Max!" Louis shouted, sprinting after him. The dog bolted down a dirt path behind the building, nose to the ground, ignoring every command. He stopped at a rusted drainage canal, sniffing wildly, then began barking at the grate. Louis yanked it open. Wedged deep inside the debris was a small, muddy object, round, scratched, but unmistakable. A GoPro. Louis's heart nearly stopped. It was common knowledge that a civilian had been parked nearby during the raid, one of those hobbyist auditors who filmed police encounters. He'd claimed his dashcam had been stolen during the chaos, likely destroyed. The department had never recovered it. But here it was. He brought it home, dried it out, and connected it to his laptop. The footage played. Shaky, low light, but everything was there. Sarah shouting. Blake raising his weapon. The suspect on his knees. The flash of Blake's gun, fired before Sarah even reached hers. It was undeniable. Sarah never pulled the trigger. She had been framed. Max, sitting beside Louis, stared at the screen, ears back, as if watching it all unfold again. Louis didn't say a word. He just reached down and scratched Max behind the ears. "You found it," he whispered. By morning, the video was uploaded anonymously to a whistleblower site, and the internet detonated. This wasn't a conspiracy theory anymore. This was proof. The video hit the news like a meteor. Every network ran it. First as a curiosity, then as a breaking story. Primetime anchors played the footage over and over. Sergeant Blake raising his weapon, firing before Sarah even unholstered hers, and Sarah screaming in horror. Suddenly, the public wasn't debating her guilt anymore. They were demanding her freedom. #FreeDetectiveConnors trended within hours. Protesters gathered outside the state capitol, holding signs with Max's face beside the words, "He knew all along." Celebrities joined the chorus. A-list actors tweeted support. Podcasters who had once condemned Sarah now dedicated entire episodes to re-examining the evidence. Even a former FBI profiler went on live TV, saying, "This isn't just about one woman. It's about a system that silenced the truth, and a dog that wouldn't let it stay buried." Inside the prison, Sarah Connors had no idea what was happening outside. She didn't have internet, no TV privileges. All she knew was that a new legal team had requested an emergency hearing. Then, just after sunset, she was called into the warden's office. He handed her a tablet. "You should see this," he muttered. The screen lit up with the video. The GoPro footage. Her voice. "Blake, don't." The gunshot. She watched it all in silence. When it ended, her eyes were glassy. Then came a second clip. Her reunion with Max, edited together from news archives and TikToks, set to soft piano music. Max sniffing the torn vest. Max howling. Max barking at Blake's image. Max leading Lewis to the GoPro. Sarah put the tablet down slowly. "That dog never stopped looking for me," she whispered. Outside the walls, Sergeant Blake had vanished. No public appearances. No statements. Internal Affairs had issued a full-scale warrant, and his house had been cleared out. But it was too late to run. The governor, facing mounting pressure, signed an executive order. Sarah's conviction was suspended pending review. And at 10:12 p.m., under a shower of camera flashes, Sarah Connors walked out of prison. The crowd erupted. Reporters screamed questions. But Sarah ignored them all. Until she saw Max. He leaped through the barrier, nearly tackling her, tail wagging so hard it looked like a blur. She dropped to her knees and buried her face in his fur. The cheers grew louder. The world wasn't just watching anymore. It was believing. Sergeant Blake was gone. His badge had been turned in. His house abandoned. Bank accounts drained. He vanished like smoke the moment the GoPro footage surfaced. But for Detective Sarah Connors, now living temporarily in Lewis's spare room, his escape wasn't the end. It was unfinished business. "This isn't justice yet," she said quietly, staring at the photo board Lewis had built in his living room. "Not until he answers for what he did. Not just to me, but to that boy he killed." Lewis nodded, but it was Max who moved first. The German Shepherd paced beside the board, his nose sniffing photos, maps, and Blake's personnel file. Then he stopped, at a photo of Blake outside a remote lake cabin, a vacation spot he'd visited often but never listed on record. Lewis squinted. "That's Lake Marlow. We always thought he used it for fishing weekends. You think he's there?" Max barked once, sharp and certain. They alerted the authorities, but red tape and jurisdictional delays threatened to slow the search. So Sarah made a decision. "I'm not waiting." Early the next morning, she, Lewis, and Max loaded into a borrowed SUV and headed north. It was risky. Sarah was still technically under review, and Blake was armed and dangerous. But she couldn't shake the fire building in her chest. Max stared out the window the entire ride, silent and focused, as if he knew exactly where they were going. By sunset, they reached the edge of Lake Marlow. The cabin was dark, quiet, no car in sight. They approached slowly, flashlights off. Max led, nose low to the ground, body tense like a coiled spring. Then he froze at the door, ears up, tail straight, teeth bared. Sarah raised her old service pistol. "He's inside." Lewis kicked the door in. Inside, the cabin was trashed, signs of a hasty escape. Food half-eaten, floorboards dusty, except for one set of boot prints leading to the back exit. But Blake hadn't made it far. Max shot into the woods behind the cabin like a rocket, barking furiously. Sarah and Lewis chased him through tangled brush until they found Max circling a figure lying face down in the dirt. Blake. Unconscious, bleeding from a fall. He had tripped while fleeing and hit his head on a rock. Sarah stood over him, breathing hard. She didn't say a word. Max did. He growled, low and protective, then sat down beside her like a soldier waiting for the next command. Blake was cuffed before sunrise. A medevac team flew him to a regional hospital under armed guard, where he awoke to find Sarah Connors, now a free woman, staring down at him through reinforced glass. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The truth had already buried him. Federal agents took over the investigation, uncovering a trail of falsified reports, deleted footage, and forced witness statements. Blake's cover-up wasn't just personal. It was part of a rotten network within the precinct. His arrest sent shockwaves through law enforcement agencies nationwide. And at the center of it all was a dog. Max became a global icon. News outlets from Tokyo to Toronto ran his story. A children's book called Max Knows hit bestseller lists within weeks. Statues were proposed. Schools invited Sarah to speak about integrity and truth. Lawmakers cited her case while drafting new Bodicum and evidence protection laws. But none of that mattered to Max. He didn't want fame. He just wanted Sarah back. And he had her. They returned home quietly, skipping the interviews and avoiding the parades. Louis, who had risked his badge to chase the truth, stood beside them as Sarah knelt in her apartment, untouched since the day she left, and whispered, "We're home, boy." Max padded through the rooms, sniffing each corner, tail wagging like it had finally let go of a breath held too long. He stopped at the door he had waited by every night, looked back at her, then lay down, this time not in grief, but in peace. Months passed. Sarah was officially exonerated. The death sentence struck from record. She declined to rejoin the force, instead opening a private investigation firm, one focused on clearing the wrongfully convicted. Her first partner, Max, of course, retired from the force but not from purpose. He wore a custom collar with a silver tag shaped like a badge. On it, engraved in bold letters, he never gave up. And every time someone asked how she survived death row, Sarah would smile softly, glance at Max, and say, "They took everything from me, but he gave it all back." One bark at a time. The world remembered the trial, but it would never forget the dog.